The Internet's #1 talk station. #1 talk station. VoiceAmerica.com.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Relationship Radio with your host, Jim Duzak. Are you interested in marriage, divorce, midlife dating? Keep it tuned right here for the next hour as Jim and his guest explore some fascinating and important topics. Now, here's your host, Jim Duzak.
Hello, and welcome to Relationship Radio. I'm Jim Duzak. I'm a divorce lawyer and mediator, a columnist for ConnectionsForWomen.com and BoomerLiving.com, and the author of the book Midlife Divorce and the Rebirth of Commitment. At one time, I even owned a dating service. You can learn more about me, if you'd like, by visiting my website, www.attorneyatlove.com. But Relationship Radio is not about me. It's about my guest. And it's also about you, the listener. Each week, I have a conversation with my guest on real-world topics related to marriage, divorce, post-divorce dating, and other aspects of men-women relationships. I'm hoping that each conversation will be so lively and informative that it draws you in and makes you think, even as you're being entertained. Today's guest is Joni Winberg. Joni is the founder of the National Association of Divorce for Women and Children and is host of the popular radio show Single Again, Now What?, which, by the way, I think is a great title. Her website is www.nadwc.org, O-R-G. That's NADWC.org, and it stands for the National Association of Divorce for Women and Children. Although Joni works extensively in the divorce recovery field, she also tries to help husbands and wives enhance and save their marriages, and thus avoid unnecessary divorces. And that's primarily what Joni and I will be talking about today, enhancing and preserving marriages. So, Joni, welcome to Relationship Radio.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's just an honor to be here.
Well, thank you so much. I really do admire so much what you're doing, and I have to say that the first time I ever heard about you and started to familiarize myself with your writings and the work of your organization, I said to myself, this is a woman after my own heart. This is a woman who really gets it, that healing from divorce is a good thing, but preventing divorce is even better. That pretty much is your philosophy, isn't it?
Absolutely. I prefer to help a couple go through or not go through the divorce so that I don't have to see them after divorce. I mean, I'm there for them if they need me, but it would be great if they didn't have to see me after divorce.
Oh, absolutely. Now, before we get too far into our discussion, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself? How did you happen to get into the fields of marriage enhancement and divorce recovery?
Well, if I go back about 10, 15 years, just to let you know what I actually did for about 18 years, and many people are surprised, I used to own and operate my own True Value hardware store.
Is that right?
Most people say, how can you be 5'3", 110 pounds and be thinking about hardware?
It doesn't fit the stereotype, that's for sure.
Oh. But actually, I had that business with my former husband, and in fact, we got divorced, and we still operated the business together for 3 more years, and then we decided at that point I wanted out of the business, and he bought me out. But, after you've been in the business for 18 years, you really start to evaluate and say, what did I love about it, and what am I happy to leave behind? Mm-hmm. And what really I loved was working with the people and working with the customers and the employees. And so at that point there, I went through many different certifications for business life coaching, for certification as far as behavior specialist, even a certified laughter leader. So that is what led me to where I am now. And then as time went on, I started working a lot with divorce attorneys and helping their clients after divorce. And they were asking me about a resource center and what kind of programs could we have for them. And they had some great advice for them as far as they could offer them a list of CPAs or therapists, which are great and you should have as well. But they wanted something more, and I kept hearing that too. The women said, more, what can we do more? So that's how the National Association of Divorce for Women and Children was born, and that's how now we are actually doing mentoring programs for women during and after divorce.
And you do, among other things, one-on-one counseling with your clients?
I do one-on-one, but as far as I have a nonprofit that actually raises funds for women during after divorce, and it's actually a group coaching teleclass that's for 12 weeks, and attorneys will refer them, their clients to me, and we do these group calls 5 at a time, and it's for women who could not afford to have any kind of a mentoring program or any kind of self-help, and the attorneys will definitely refer them to me. And it's just wonderful. We're finishing up a group right now, and it's just amazing the growth that they have experienced in the 12 sessions. So we're excited about this program.
And, of course, it's probably safe to say that there's no divorce that is 100% a happy one, but if you and your husband were able to continue to operate a business together for 3 years after the divorce, certainly there must have been quite a bit of goodwill there anyway.
It was pretty amicable, and today, he still runs the store, and it's only 2 miles down the street from my house. And, I think we just took the adult way of handling a divorce. There were times that the emotions could get, caught up with us, and going through court is certainly never a pleasant experience. But, we both kept our children in mind that, we need to be adults about this, and we need to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that. And so we're very blessed. My daughter's 28 today. She's a doctor of audiology. My son...
Well, happy birthday to her.
Oh, yes. And my son is 24, and he's college grad. And so both of them are doing very well, and I think that probably represents both of us.
Yeah, well, that says something about both of you. I mean, that's wonderful. Joni, you once wrote a short article called 5 Tips on How to Enjoy a Happy Marriage and Keep It That Way.
Yeah.
It was less than a page long, but it contained more insight and wisdom than some 300-page books I've read. And I really mean that. What I'd like to do is to go through each of those 5 tips today with you, and maybe we can expand on them, and you can explain to the listeners why these tips are, in your opinion, so important. The first tip that you wrote about is focus on the strengths and value that each of you brings to the relationship.
Yes, and just to back up for a minute so people understand where these tips or how they evolved, working with so many people after divorce, and you could see the challenges that they were having. And then when I was also working with couples that were trying to avoid divorce, it really got back to the basics. And this is what I think most people are looking for today in everything. You hear about, even with the economy, we need to get back to basics. And I think it's the same thing for marriages, for people to get back to basics. There's no magic. It's just good, solid, back to basics advice, and that's what this really is. So on the first tip, when we talk about focusing on the strengths and the value that each of you bring to the relationship, talking to couples, I generally see, or even just friends, or hearing people talk about their spouses, they're generally focusing on their weaknesses or their quirks or what
first words out of their mouth, right?
Yeah, what drives them crazy. And so I'm thinking, wow, it's just, we all hear about today the law of attraction, and what you think about, you bring about, so to speak. So I'm thinking, wow, this is what they're really focusing on. And who likes to hear about their weaknesses and what they're doing wrong? And you lots of times hear couples say, well, I just can't seem to do anything right. And
well, I think that's excellent advice. And, there's something that when you were talking about that, I remembered, of all things, an article I read once in Sports Illustrated about a hockey coach. Now, you're a divorce coach, but there was a hockey coach that was talking about what he does to motivate players who, especially those who have one very strong strength and a glaring weakness too. And I remember what he said. He said, what I always do is focus on the strength, not the weakness. In other words, if a particular player was, let's say, a great shooter, but not a fast skater, that in practice the coach would always be saying, the shot, the shot, the shot. He wanted to, in other words, instill confidence in the player and have him do what he does best. And even the way he did it was, even the weakness was turned into a strength, because in that example, the guy who was not a fast skater, he said, all I really wanted him to do was to learn to skate to the point where he had his best angle for a shot. So that's all he had to do. That's all the skating had to do, really, was just to get to the point where he could take the shot. And I always thought that there was a lot of truth to that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think for couples to realize that we are all unique. The other person, we can't change them. The only person we can work on is ourselves. But to realize that we are all unique. So if I look at it as what strengths can I bring to the table, and what strengths can you bring to the table? And I'm sure, Jim, you've probably seen, and you hear the same thing over and over again, where we always marry our opposites.
Yes.
And so as a certified behavior specialist, we have kind of a cute saying where we say opposites attract and then opposites attack.
I've heard that, too. That's a good line. It's true.
Sure, and you hear about couples where they'll say, you know, when I was dating, I really loved the way this person brought more fun into my life, and the other opposite person would say, and I really loved the way this person was a lot more organized than me. And then they get married, and it's like all of a sudden they don't want to go out as much or have that much fun, and the person's like, well, I love having fun, and you liked it when we were dating. How come you don't anymore? And it's like, it's just part of the dating game, so to speak, but it's to realize that we do usually marry our opposites. And instead of looking at it as something that's driving you crazy, to say, you know what, thank goodness you're that way, because you're helping me get out of my comfort zone, and to realize that we each can bring something of value to the table.
You know, we all like to live in that comfort zone that you mentioned, but comfort zones can be among the worst things for us. You know, I mean, look at all the battered women who stay in truly bad, truly dangerous relationships simply because they know it's bad, but it still feels comfortable at some level to them.
They can't help themselves. And so I really love working with couples to have them understand of the different types of personalities, and just to have them realize that maybe one is more of a director who likes end results, and so that person's going to be more of someone that pushes. And then there is the type of person or the personality that loves to have fun and is very free-spirited, so to speak. And then there's one that loves harmony and nurturing. And then there's the analytical one that loves all the details. And so, but every one of those makes...
Absolutely. Joni, we've got to take a quick break, but we will be right back with more marriage enhancement and divorce prevention tips from our guest, Joni Winberg. This is Relationship Radio, and I'm Jim Duzak.
Ask the experts. Call toll-free right now, 1-866-472-5787. And ask our All-Star team to answer your question. That's 1-866-472-5787.
Thank you for calling.
VoiceAmerica.com.
Hi, I'm Jim Duzak, host of Voice America's Relationship Radio. I'm the author of a book called Midlife Divorce and the Rebirth of Commitment. It's a book that deals not only with divorce, but with how to enhance your marriage and possibly avoid divorce. Every chapter of the book contains real-world information and advice on issues like sex, money, communication, in-law problems, and the temptation to have an affair. For those thinking of separating or filing for divorce, the book explains how to do it the right way. It also deals with the critical issues of life after divorce, including when to start dating again and how to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. If you visit my website, www.attorneyatlove.com, you can read excerpts from all 17 chapters of the book. If you'd like to order the book, the site has direct links to Amazon.com and the other major online booksellers. And you can use the site to contact me. I'd love to hear from you.
The latest business information is made simple with the Voice America Business Network. The professionals in the business world bring you live talk radio shows featuring an array of business topics, strategies for building wealth, sales and marketing, stock trading, investing, and business technology. Voice America Business hosts are professionals in their fields and bring to the airwaves weekly business discussions that offer up-to-date information, advice, and education. The Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business talk. Want to have behind-the-scenes access to some of the greatest minds of today? On Shift in Action, we feature leading-edge innovators who are building a more conscious, sustainable, and healthy culture. Host Stephen Dinan offers live shows with evolutionary leaders such as Deepak Chopra, Van Jones, and others who are creating new paradigms for conscious living. You can keep your finger on the pulse of the latest frontier work with our weekly transmission of Inspired Wisdom on Shift in Action, broadcast live every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, noon Eastern Time on Voice America.
Stimulating talk.
It gets those synapses in the brain firing really fast.
All the time. The #1 Internet talk station where your opinion counts. VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Relationship Radio with your host, Jim Duzak, an inside look at marriage, divorce, and midlife dating. Now, back to Jim Duzak.
Hello. We're talking today with Joni Winberg, the founder of the National Association of Divorce for Women and Children, www.nadwc.org, and who is also the host of the weekly radio show, Single Again, Now What? But today we're talking not so much about divorce as how to prevent it. Joni is giving us 5 tips on how to enjoy a happy marriage and keep it that way. And I have to tell you, these are all tips that are easy to understand and that you can start applying right away, like tonight. We've already spoken about tip number 1, which is focus on the strengths and the value that each of you brings to the relationship. The second tip of Joni's is master the art of true listening. What do you mean by true listening, Joni?
Oh, when you really think about it, are people really, truly listening to each other?
Mm-hmm.
Something to be aware of. And so I actually have an exercise. I was working with a couple probably over a year ago, and I'll share this little story with you. The wife was complaining or sharing with me that she wanted to be able to feel heard with her husband and share and also to listen to him and share different things from him as well. And so the vision is that she would try to talk with him, and they'd be both sitting on the couch, and she'd be sharing her day, and he'd say, "I'm listening, dear," and he'd be clicking the clicker.
Yeah.
And so she, definitely did not feel heard. But it got to a point where they really needed to do something about this. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, here we go. So if you guys are willing, this is what I'd like you to try to do. So I said for 3 times a week, about 20 minutes each time, shut off everything. No phone, no TV or cell phones or computers, iPods, just shut it all off and really just take this time to be with each other. So they decided to take a walk each time. And it really helped them because they could get away from all that.
That's a great way to, it really enforces it. You don't have that temptation to I just need to check that one, that email to see if that one guy got back to me, that kind of thing.
The weather or something. Sure. So what the key was that they were to each share with each other something about the day or maybe something that was on their mind or something that they, really wanted to share. But the key was that the person listening had to repeat it back to the person and then ask, did I get that right? Mm-hmm. And so it really put them on the spot that they had to listen to each other because you can certainly tell if someone's not listening if they can't repeat back what you just said.
That's certainly a useful exercise. Were they able to follow through on that?
Well, at first it was a little bit uncomfortable. They were definitely out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, it seems artificial, probably.
Yes. So, but as they got into it more and more, they couldn't believe how much they learned about each other. They couldn't believe that the other person really felt that way. They were just amazed. And so they couldn't, then it got to the point where they could not do this. They just really looked forward to it. But they got closer and they really became happier, and they felt heard, and that certainly is one of the basic needs of human beings, is that we want to feel heard and understood. And they were just amazed.
It's just so easy to get into these bad habits and not even realize you're doing it. One person is looking at the computer screen and at the same time saying, okay, I'll be in there in 5 minutes. In the meantime, why don't you pick the wine for tonight, or whatever it may be. And they think they're communicating, but it's a very unsatisfying kind of communication.
Well, think about how you feel, or how it feels when someone is half listening to you, and it's like, and they're not stopping what they're doing, and they're distracted. You don't feel respected. You certainly don't feel heard, and it hurts. And so eventually, if this keeps happening consistently, then where is the communication? And so this is something where I feel a lot of couples really need to work on this one. So that's why I call it the art of the true listening. And true listening is when you're able to repeat it back.
That's right.
And share with them what you heard. But and the key is also not to try and fix it. We're not here to fix it. We're just here to, so if I repeat it back and I ask, did I get that right, or tell me more, or just share with me more, and it just opens up for more and more conversation.
Well, you mentioned the fix-it part of it. That's one of the things that often is a source of frustration between men and women, where the guy, I think women really need to explain to men better that they are not necessarily looking for the man to immediately fix it. Because if they don't do that, the guy is going to be annoyed at the woman. A woman may say, come home complaining, practically in tears about some coworker, on the job, and the guy may say, "Listen, this is what you need to do. You got to say this to the guy, and then you've got to go to your employee, your supervisor, and tell him this, and sort of lay it all down what she needs to do." And if she doesn't do that, and a week later she comes home in tears again, the guy is going to be less likely to listen to her. And in fact, he's going to be annoyed the whole time, even if he does listen to her.
Right.
Well, we could have a whole show just on the men-women differences, but that is that's a big one. That is a real big one.
And also, even though we enjoy having all the techie things to help us supposedly with our lives, with the computers and the iPods and the BlackBerries and so forth, really when you think about it, it does pull us away even more. There's another kind of a cute way to communicate where someone said, I do text my spouse and tease them a little bit, like I'm looking forward to seeing you tonight, or, we might tease and communicate that way, which is kind of a fun thing. You can use the techie stuff for that.
Mm-hmm. If it's a supplement to other communications and not a substitute for it.
No, not at all. But the point of it is not to let that all be a distraction to the point where you're not communicating. And sometimes I've seen a commercial once in a while where it shows the family on vacation and there's the child over there texting, and I'm thinking, shut that thing off so that they can get involved in the family. And so we really have to be aware of the new techie information and the help that we have.
Yeah, the kid who's sitting at the dinner table kind of very reluctantly and then spending the whole time just texting his friends, and just sort of announcing the fact that he is, not going to be. If you can get me here in my body, but my mind is going to be elsewhere.
And I think probably not that talking about parents and their children, that's really not the topic today, but just to have them be aware that there's a time, just like for a couple, and there's time for parents and kids, that all that stuff needs to be shut off or tuned out, and at least give some sacred time to the family and sacred time to the couple, each other.
Absolutely. Your third tip, Joni, is an interesting one too, a very kind of provocative sounding one. You say, treat your spouse as you would a stranger. Why is that a good thing?
Well, I observe people a lot, and I think this is something that I just love to do. Mm-hmm. And I do a lot of networking, and I see how people treat each other at these events, and they're listening, and they're smiling, and they're kind and polite. And I'm thinking, this is great. And I think probably all spouses could have complained somewhere along the line where they say, you were so great to the neighbor and nice to this person, and then you come home and you're just grouchy with me or yelling or mean, and I'm just thinking, why do we not treat the one that we supposedly love and married for the rest of our lives, why do we not treat that person with respect?
It's a really good point, and it's there's no good answer to it.
Well, yeah, and you really wonder how that happens. We just get bored, or it becomes so familiar that we don't have to worry about impressing that person anymore. You just really wonder how that evolves and happens, and you can see where it would cause some resentment with the couple or one of the persons that it happens to, where it's like, wow, you treated them so nicely, and you're just so disrespectful for me at home. So, what gives here? Why is it happening this way? So if we can, once again, it goes back to respecting and seeing the value that each person brings to the table, and just honoring them and loving them.
It is interesting how we go to such lengths to impress strangers in all kinds of settings. I'm thinking of these guys in particular who love to, buy flashy cars, and who are they really impressing? They're impressing some 19-year-old valet kid at the restaurant, that they don't know and will probably never see again, because the next time he comes back, it'll be a different 19-year-old,
Absolutely.
Or people who just, they'll go out together and they'll finally get dressed up nicely, and they'll go to a restaurant, and there's probably not a single person all night long in a restaurant that they know. But then when they're together at home, they look like slobs, and listen, I'm not being harsh on people. Listen, I look like a slob myself from time to time, but I think sometimes when you do that all the time, you are conveying a kind of unconsciously anyway, a certain disrespect to your spouse.
And it's really, being that patient person. If you're patient with your coworkers or people that you've just met, why are we not patient and understanding with our spouse? And like I said, these are, people that you've had children together, you've maybe had businesses together, you own a home together. Why on earth would they not be treated the best? I always look at it that way and think, why does that happen?
Absolutely. This is the person that you declared before, your friends, your family, your clergymen, and if you, and in the eyes of God, that this is the person you're choosing for your life, and and then before too long, it's just the person becomes an afterthought. It's sad, but we've got to take a short break again in a moment. But we'll be back with more marriage enhancement, divorce prevention tips from Joni Winberg. This is Relationship Radio, and I'm Jim Duzak.
Talk. That's all we do is talk. If you'd like to talk, call us toll-free right now at 1-866-472-5787. 1-866-472-5787. That's it. VoiceAmerica.com.
Hi, I'm Jim Duzak, host of Voice America's Relationship Radio. I'm the author of a book called Midlife Divorce and the Rebirth of Commitment. It's a book that deals not only with divorce, but with how to enhance your marriage and possibly avoid divorce. Every chapter of the book contains real-world information and advice on issues like sex, money, communication, in-law problems, and the temptation to have an affair. For those thinking of separating or filing for divorce, the book explains how to do it the right way. It also deals with the critical issues of life after divorce, including when to start dating again and how to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. If you visit my website, www.attorneyatlove.com, you can read excerpts from all 17 chapters of the book. If you'd like to order the book, the site has direct links to Amazon.com and the other major online booksellers. And you can use the site to contact me. I'd love to hear from you.
Are you ready to grow your business? Listen for the Independent Business Owner Show with your coach, Rick Corrado. This entertaining talk radio program will bring you the tools to help increase your business. You'll learn sales success, time management, lead generation, business development, life balance, and much more. Rick Corrado is here to help you take your business to the next level. Listen for the Independent Business Owner Show, heard live every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific on the Voice America Business Network.
The biggest secret about men is that they are far more complicated than we often give them credit for. Join Dr. Chris Blazina as we discover more about the secret lives of men. This is an informative and positive program exploring the various facets of men's lives, from growing up to growing old. The Secret Lives of Men with Dr. Chris Blazina is broadcast live every Tuesday afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time on Voice America.
Streaming live, the leader in Internet talk radio, VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Relationship Radio with your host, Jim Duzak, an inside look at marriage, divorce, and midlife dating. Now, back to Jim Duzak.
Hello again. We're talking today with Joni Winberg, the founder of the National Association of Divorce for Women and Children, www.nadwc.org. And although she's very much active in the field of divorce recovery, we're not so much talking about divorce today as how to prevent it. And Joni has been giving us the first 3 of her 5 tips on how to enjoy a happy marriage and keep it that way. And just to recap them, the first one that we talked about was focus on your spouse's strengths and not just the weaknesses. Number 2 was master the art of true listening. 3 was treat your spouse as you would a stranger. And number 4 is never stop spoiling each other. Now, that one seems pretty easy to understand and seems like fun, too, but people don't always do that, do they, Joni?
We tend to get caught up in the activities of the day, or we're busy and we're tired or whatever, but it doesn't have to be complicated, or it doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. I always just say to someone, maybe after a long day, if you know your spouse is going to be running late or pretty tired when that person walks in the door, maybe you meet them or greet them with a cup of tea or a glass of wine. And what does that little action say? It's like, wow, you're really thinking of me?
Absolutely. It's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, and you've done enough, just a little thing to show that, hey, I understand, I'm here, and I support you, and I love you, and here's your glass of wine.
I once wrote an article about, it was Valentine's Day advice for men, and what I said was that Valentine's Day is all well and good, but, don't think of it as just a once-a-year thing. And then when you just go out to a CVS or a Walgreens or something, and you're going in there to buy some, whatever it is, batteries or something, just take an extra 30 seconds to walk down the bubble bath aisle or something, and just pick out some little thing. It doesn't, it can be some $5.95, face moisturizer or something, but if you just bring that home and say, I'm thinking about you, I know, or a bubble bath, and say, you used to take bubble baths. I haven't seen you do that in a long time.
Or, they have such wonderful cards today of sharing and showing your love, and it could be just a simple little, poem or some little card.
Especially if the words don't come that easy to you, it's a good way to do it.
And once again, after my divorce and the different men that I'd be dating, they did that all the time, and I thought, wow, I miss this. This is really nice.
That's right.
So once again, though,
there's another example of what we've been talking about is why are they so nice to each other while they're dating and then get into such bad habits after they get married? We could have a whole show on that one.
So it's just really thinking about how can I spoil this person, and that's also saying to that person, you really know me, you really understand that, like you're saying, bubble bath. The husband knows that knows his wife enough to say, I know she loves bubble baths, and I know this would really mean a lot to her. So it's showing that you understand me to that point, that you know what could spoil me.
Well, that's absolutely right, and that's right. That it's all part of that same awareness. It doesn't take that much. I mean, this is the other, again, talking more to men than to women, because women tend to be more aware of these things. I mean, there's going to be exceptions, obviously, but yeah, it doesn't take that much. You know, your wife goes to the hairdressers, let's say, and she says that she's going to get a haircut, you know. She comes back an hour later, say something about it. You know, say, you look nice. I like the way they did it. You know, it does. You don't have to. You know, it doesn't require great powers of memory or concentration to do that.
Definitely, awareness is the key, and that's why we say, you know, when the spoiling stops, then the marriage is going to feel that strain. So it's you know, to keep it alive and to keep it fun, and you know, fun is just a big part of this. Part of spoiling each other is just to be impulsive and have fun. It's like, you know what, I didn't want you to cook tonight, or I didn't want you to do this. Let's just go. Let's get in the car and go for a ride.
Yeah, something spontaneous, you know, again, like you used to do when you were dating more.
Yes, and so I think a lot of the things is to remember how it was when you were dating. And it's like, who doesn't want to still have that fun? You know, that brings a spark back into the marriage to say, you know what, who cares about the dishes, or who cares about this, or whatever we got to do? Let's just drop it. It won't run away. It'll still be here when we get back, and let's just go. And I always remember growing up going for that Sunday drive, and that was the most fun thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's do the Sunday drives again, you know.
Well, you know, I was just thinking as you were talking about dating and among married, you know, for married people, that, you know, putting politics aside, I mean, one of the things that I'm very impressed with President Obama and his wife Michelle is that at least according to what they were quoted prior to his taking office, I don't know if it's still true now, but that they have this really sacrosanct Saturday night date night.
Yes.
And they have had this for years, and they do not let anything get in the way of that.
That's right, and that's exactly where you could do some spoiling of each other and practice your true listening.
Well, that's absolutely true, you know, and I hope that they do something more on their dates, more fun than, you know, to just talk about, you know, the General Motors bailout or something. You know, I hope it's not just shop talk, and that it is something. Well,
I just really believe in having fun and letting go, and just remember how it felt when we were young, and go
exactly, and just not have an agenda other than to enjoy the moment and enjoy each other.
Definitely.
But, you know, related to the spoiling tip of yours is the fifth and final tip in your article, and that is do an act of kindness. It is sort of related to the spoiling. It's not quite the same thing, but, you know, I think that people there, too, they forget about, you know, acting in a kind manner towards your husband and wife.
And to be kind. You know, you hear so much about that today. Do an act of kindness. And people are doing wonderful acts of kindness, and I never say stop. I think it's great. Mm-hmm. And they're doing this for strangers. But once again, it comes back to why not with your spouse? I mean, I know how great it feels when I do an act of kindness for a stranger. I mean, I feel totally energized. And also that person who doesn't know me. And you hear a lot about people when they go through a coffee drive-up, you know, getting coffee, and they'll say, or a toll booth, they'll say, you know, here's the money to pay for the person behind me. And you never really get to hang around to see the reaction of the person that you've done that for. And that's really the key to this, is that you're not expecting anything in return. You're just doing it out of the kindness of your heart.
That's right.
You care enough.
You know, one good example is do a chore around the house that he or she usually does. You know, I suggest to men that, you know, something as simple as loading or unloading, loading or emptying the dishwasher, for example, is something that, you know, may take only 5 minutes or so. But if it's something that your wife usually does, I'll guarantee you she'll notice it. You don't have to tell her you did it. You know, she will notice it, and she'll say, well, what'd you do that for? And you say, well, I could see you had a tough day. It was no big deal. It just took me a few minutes. But let me tell you, those few minutes will go a long way.
Definitely. Now you're helping men be very smart here, Tim.
well, it's most of these things. My mantra is little things repeated often.
Yes, exactly.
And most of the time, you don't have to make huge changes in your behavior. It's just work a few little habits into your daily routine.
Absolutely.
It doesn't take much more than that.
And the thing of it is, too, is that whether the person knows or not, or, like you said, she definitely would notice if you unloaded the dishwasher. But, I remember, and this was my former, I was taking a course one time, and in the book, he actually had just taken little pieces of paper and put a smiley face on it, or see you later, have fun tonight. And, so I'd open my book to be studying or reading, and I'd get this little note in between. I mean, just simple little silly things like that, but it brought a smile to my face, and I felt really good about it. But once again, the act of kindness is just, showing how much you care. Not only is it great to do for strangers, but not to forget the spouse that once again, you've had children with, or a business or a home, and spending so much time with, and just really letting them know that you care, and not necessarily anything in return. You're not keeping track.
So it's obvious that you're so enthusiastic about marriage enhancement ideas. Do you actually get, other than in your writing perhaps, or in being on a show like this, in your normal day-to-day work in the divorce field, do you get a chance to work with married people very often?
They do, as far as people will say that they were thinking about divorce, and at that point I'll go over some things with them, or say, why don't we, take some time together, why don't we talk, we do some communication skills. I just say, have you tried everything, unless it's a situation where it's dangerous or violent or something like that. But if the couples are just, they think they've lost the love for each other, or they can't seem to communicate anymore, and they don't feel heard, then I'm thinking, let's go back to some basics here. Try it, and if it doesn't work out, and you come out afterwards and say, I'm happy that we've learned more things, but it's just...
the court is still going to be there in a few months. You can always get your divorce if that's the only solution to the problem.
There's actually... When you have a chance, I just thought I'd let your listeners know that I actually have it's designed for women, but it's actually called selfcaremagic.com. They can go to, and it's actually a tip booklet on different tips to help take care of themselves, and it does talk a little bit about general tips and some divorce tips in there, but in general, it's just some really good tips. So
I like that.
That's off to your guests.
Joni, I'm sorry to say we're coming to the end of this part of the show, but you're going to have to come back soon, because there's so much more I want to talk to you about in both marriage and divorce. Let me mention your website one more time, www.nadwc.org, and your radio show is Single Again, Now What? Well, thanks for being with us today, Joni, but there's still one more segment of Relationship Radio to come, so don't leave.
Have you ever thought about having your own internet talk show? Well, if you said yes, then click About Us. Then click Be a Host to get more information. Or just call Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417.
Say that again?
480-294-6417. VoiceAmerica.com.
Hi, I'm Jim Duzak, host of Voice America's Relationship Radio. I'm the author of a book called Midlife Divorce and the Rebirth of Commitment. It's a book that deals not only with divorce, but with how to enhance your marriage and possibly avoid divorce. Every chapter of the book contains real-world information and advice on issues like sex, money, communication, in-law problems, and the temptation to have an affair. For those thinking of separating or filing for divorce, the book explains how to do it the right way. It also deals with the critical issues of life after divorce, including when to start dating again and how to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. If you visit my website, www.attorneyatlove.com, you can read excerpts from all 17 chapters of the book. If you'd like to order the book, the site has direct links to Amazon.com and the other major online booksellers. And you can use the site to contact me. I'd love to hear from you.
Total career success. What does it mean to you? Voice America presents a radio program dedicated to help you achieve your career goal. Even in times of economic uncertainty, you can achieve your financial goals. Whether you're a college grad, new in the working environment, or a top-level executive, you will benefit from the practical and proven advice on job search and career advancement. Join Ken and Cheryl Dawson every Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern for Total Career Success on Voice America.
Wake up with a unique daily show. Listen for Mitchell John in the morning. Mitchell will bring you news, sports, and stock news from yesterday. You'll hear interviews from high-profile figures from the world of sports, entertainment, politics, and authors. Mitchell will talk to people throughout America. This is a show that throws right down the center. It's fun, information, and yes, even a little bit of music. Catch Mitchell John in the morning at 6 a.m. Pacific Time, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on Voice America, and Thursdays on the Voice America Business Network.
The Internet's #1 talk station. #1 talk station. VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Relationship Radio with your host, Jim Duzak, an inside look at marriage, divorce, and midlife dating. Now, back to Jim Duzak.
Hello again. Before we get started on this segment, I wanted to repeat the website that my guest, Joni Winberg, mentioned in passing just before we finished up with her appearance, and that was www.selfcaremagic.com, SELFCAREMAGIC.com. Anyway, I may have mentioned earlier that in addition to being an author and now a talk show host, I'm a lawyer. Since lawyers always love to plead their case, I'm calling the final segment of each show my closing argument. What I try to do is to make my case, so to speak, on a particular relationship issue and offer some advice that you may be able to use right now. The issue I'll be discussing today is it's okay to argue. A well-known marriage educator once said that the #1 predictor of divorce is the habitual avoidance of conflict. She didn't say that conflict leads to divorce. She said that trying to avoid conflict does. And I agree with her. It's unrealistic to think that any marriage can be conflict-free. Conflict is going to arise in any relationship in which people share a home, a bed, a checkbook, a family and an extended family, and presumably a future. Even when two people are well-matched and well-intentioned, there will always be words that are misunderstood, motives that are suspect, moods that are unpredictable, and subjects that inevitably lead to arguments. Like it or not, this is normal, and it's dangerous to pretend that it isn't. Avoiding conflict does not make it go away. It only postpones it. And postponing it usually means a buildup of resentment and frustration. Some people are so fearful of conflict that they avoid even pleasant topics of conversation for fear that they will somehow deteriorate into a nasty exchange. I remember a New Yorker cartoon once of a husband and wife at a marriage counselor's office that had the caption, "We never talk anymore. We figured out that's when we have all our fights." Well, the good news is you don't have to avoid talking. It actually is possible to disagree without being disagreeable. All you and your spouse need to do is adhere to a few basic ground rules. Rule number 1 is keep the discussion focused on the issue at hand, not on what happened yesterday, last week, or 10 years ago. As I say in my book, banish the phrases "you always" and "you never" from your vocabulary. And I'm talking about phrases like "you always put yourself first," or "you never pay attention to me." All these words do is invite denial and retaliation. What do you mean? You're the one who always or who never. So let the past go. Rule number 2 is play fair. Don't intimidate, belittle, insult, or humiliate your spouse. No matter how great the provocation, you'll never be able to get those words back or to undo the hurt. Rule number 3 is don't get into arguments after you've had a couple of drinks. They tend to turn ugly in a hurry. Rule number 4 is have a sense of proportion and a sense of humility. Write down a list of at least 3 things you do or don't do that your spouse has a legitimate right to complain about. You should work on those things as best you can, but you should think about them before you open your mouth to criticize your spouse about one of his or her failings. And rule number 5 is, if things are still veering out of control, learn to stop and say, this is stupid. Why are we doing this to each other? And say it with a smile. If you can follow these 5 rules, or just some of them, you won't be so afraid of conflict. You may even come to realize that a healthy exchange of opinions, even at times a heated exchange of opinions, can clear the air and defuse the frustrations we all feel when we keep things bottled up for too long. It can also make you realize that marital harmony does not have to mean marital uniformity. It's okay for you and your spouse to have different opinions about things. Just be sure you express those opinions in a way that doesn't poison the waters for years to come. You know, there's a book out I read a month or 2 ago called I Hate Conflict. It's written by a woman named Lee Raffel. I think it's spelled Raffel. And Lee Raffel has been writing books about relationships for the better part of 20 years or more, but this is her most recent book. And I happened to, I was so taken by the book that I called her up after I read it. I found out where she lived and got her phone number. And she told me that she gets more people that say to her, you know, I bought your book just based on the title, you know, because you know, I hate conflict, you know, and it's kind of a universal thing. But the problem is, or I should say, the solution is that if you see conflict as really nothing more than different ways that different people have of seeing the world. Conflict does not have to mean one person, you know, having a meltdown and the other person just going into a shell. It could just mean, as I say, a healthy sharing of different opinions. But the key is to fight fair and to fight in a way that you don't regret it later. So before we wrap up the show, I want to tell you about next week's guest. You may have seen Carol Brody Fleet on Good Morning America or heard her on NPR. She's the author of Widows Wear Stilettos, a humorous-sounding book about a very real and very sad phenomenon, the woman who becomes a widow at a young age. Carol herself was a widow at the age of 40 when her husband died of ALS, or what's commonly called Lou Gehrig's disease. Given the nature of his disease, she was also a full-time caregiver to her husband for over 2 years before his death, while also raising her preteen daughter. Because this is a show about men-women relationships, Carol will talk to us about the challenges and rewards of forming new relationships after the death of a spouse. And she'll tell you why the widowhood is a different situation from being divorced. I've spoken to Carol on the phone, and I can guarantee you that she is a woman with some very interesting things to say. So tune in next Friday, March 20th. I'd also like to say that in connection with my book, that I have a standing offer to book clubs, particularly clubs that read nonfiction books, to appear either by telephone or if they're here in the state of Arizona where I live, in person at your book club meeting if you're reading my book. I'd love to, if we do it by telephone, I could, depending on the telephone arrangements that we have, I can do it either by speakerphone or to speak individually to the members. And as I say, here in at least southern Arizona, I'll be happy to appear in person. All you need to do is to write to me at Jim, J-I-M, at attorneyatlove.com. And if you want to read more about the book, just go to my site, attorneyatlove.com, and you can read excerpts from all 17 chapters of the book. So, I want to once again thank my guest, Joni Winberg, and thank you for listening. And I hope you'll come back next week and listen to my interview with Carol Brody-Fleet. This is Jim Duzak. Have a great weekend and spread the love around. Bye till next week.
Thanks again for joining us this week on Relationship Radio with Jim Duzak. Please join us again next Friday at 5